2015 Kia MVP Award.
My goal is to win a championship, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations, 1995-96 NBA Most Valuable Player.
The MVP award is one of the most coveted awards in the NBA. It's truly a special award, literally a one-of-a-kind achievement. It's the most prized possession an individual player can achieve. Its value is held so deeply by fans, the media, and the players because there's only one MVP. Only one person can be the most valuable player. Ever since the beginnings of the NBA, the league has made, at least in my eyes, some questionable decisions about the MVP. Certain aspects like voter fatigue, team performance, the storylines, and playoff performance really cloud the judgment of who should really be crowned as the most valuable player. But what if we didn't have to deal with these outside factors? What if we could see who the MVP was based off of statistics, numbers, and data? What if the MVP actually went to the best player in the league? What if the MVP went to the best player in the league? Well, in today's video, we're going to answer that specific question. Through viewing the seasons of 1960 until 2022 and the MVP candidates, I hand-selected who I personally believe should have won the MVP for each year. Once again, I did this using mainly stats that I found, but a little prior knowledge and preference of who I think is better. And once again, these results do not include factors like voter fatigue, how good your team is, performance in the playoffs, and any existing storylines to sway the results. We're gonna find who objectively won the MVP for 63 years. Right now, I'm gonna name you guys every new MVP candidate selected by myself on the left, the year in the middle, and the existing MVP of that year on the right. Without further ado, let's get into it. Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, Willis Reed, Jerry West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bob McAdoo, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, George Gervin, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Moses Malone, Adrian Dantley, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, 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 David Robinson, Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Chris Paul, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Steph Curry, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, James Harden, Nikola Jokic. Well, that was a lot of names. Let's take a look at these names again. These are the 63 NBA MVPs if they were redone by myself. The green rows are the MVPs the NBA got right, meaning they actually chose the best player in the league to be the MVP. The rows that are red are the MVPs the NBA got wrong, meaning they didn't choose the best player in the league to be the MVP. The NBA got 36 MVPs right, but they got 27 MVPs wrong. This means that the league got about 57% of the MVPs right, but about 43% of them wrong. Let's look at it from each era. As we can see, the NBA messed up the most in the 60s, only getting 40% of the MVPs right. The league has been doing the best in recent years. From 2010 to 2022, the NBA has gotten 8 of 12 MVPs right, so 66%. Other than those eras, the NBA has been consistently around 50 to 60%. How about we look at the actual data of what separates the new MVPs? I crunched the numbers up from 63 years of MVPs. I used 4 main stats to assist me: points, rebounds, assists, and win shares, because the majority of stats that are used today weren't available 60 years ago. So we're just going to keep it simple. The MVPs I chose averaged more points per game and had more win shares. The MVPs the league chose had more rebounds and assists. But when we look at the combined scores of these 4 stats, my MVPs beat the league's MVPs by 4 points. 60.2 to 64.2. So the league has some room for improvement. But I think one of the most shocking differences that comes up are the individual players that won the award. Let's take a look at this long list. We're going to start from the players that won the most new MVPs to the least. What immediately pops out is the sheer volume of MVPs players like Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Wilt Chamberlain would have won. These three players dominate the list. We see players that would have increased their accounts like LeBron James, Dirk Nowitzki, and James Harden. Next, we see NBA greats that obviously deserved a few MVPs, Larry Bird, Shaq, and Karl Malone as a few examples. Then we go through many really good NBA players that may get an MVP throughout their career. Then we go through the Donut Boys, so the players that had 0 MVPs. The players that you say were snubbed, but to me were never the best player in the league according to the numbers. Before, Russell originally had 4 MVPs, but now doesn't even have 1. Magic Johnson used to have 3, but now he has 0. Steve Nash went from 2 MVPs to 0, and the rest all went from 1 to 0. The 3 names that stand out amongst this list are quite obvious: Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, and Wilt Chamberlain. Together, they make up 26 of the 63 MVPs. This means if you were to randomly select a new MVP from any year, there would be a 41% chance you would pick one of these 3 players on that random year. The effects of these 3 titans gobbling up all the MVPs are more than just that. Originally, there were 35 unique players that won MVPs from 1960 to 2022. 13 of them didn't even win a single MVP in the new version, or 37% of them. Of the 37 total players involved with this list, so anyone that won an old MVP, a new MVP, or both, 12 of them had more new MVPs than old, 8 of them stayed the same, and 17 of them had more old MVPs than new. The effects of these 3 historic players, MJ, Kareem, and Wilt, caused so many players to decrease. Alright, let's take a look at this chart from the beginning. The 60s are almost completely dominated by Chamberlain. He started the 60s off with 5 straight MVPs. Oscar Robertson then interrupted that streak, but Chamberlain came back with 3 more. Wilt Chamberlain won 80% of the new MVPs of the 60s. Because of Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell doesn't even get to see 1 new MVP. Then from the early 70s to about the early 80s, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar steals the throne. Within a span of 11 years, from 1971 to 1981, Kareem won the MVP 9 times. This means he won it about 82% of the time from the span. Then around the mid-80s, we see guys like Moses Malone, Larry Bird, even Adrian Dantley win the MVP. This was until Michael Jordan had a very similar reign of MVPs as Kareem did in the 70s. Michael Jordan also had an 11-year span where he won 9 MVPs. He had a 7-year streak, which is the longest streak of this video, from 1987 to 1993. After that, we see some more variety in the award. In the late 90s to the mid-2000s, we see a mixed group of big men win the award. Players like Shaq, Timmy D, Karl Malone, and Dirk all win multiple MVPs during this time. Dirk Nowitzki took away both of Steve Nash's MVPs in 2005 and 2006. Then in 2008, we see Chris Paul sneak his way into an MVP, stealing it from Kobe Bryant. After that, LeBron James goes on a very impressive 5-year streak of winning the award. Next, we have a curveball. Many may not have expected to dominate this list: James Harden. Harden won 4 new MVPs in a 6-year span from 2015 to 2020. Harden took MVPs away from greats like Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, and Giannis. And to wrap up this list, Nikola Jokic keeps his 2 MVPs from the last 2 years. One of the biggest fantasies about the concept of this video are how some players' resumes are heavily affected by this. Let's start off with the man who has the most real MVPs ever, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem is a 19-time All-Star, he has 6 rings, a 2-time scoring champion, 15-time All-NBA, 11-time All-Defensive, Rookie of the Year winner, a 2-time Finals MVP, and a 6-time MVP. In the hypothetical NBA history I made up, Kareem won 9 MVPs. Imagine what 3 more MVPs would do for him. It would make the gap between him and, in my opinion, the top 2 undisputed players of all time, in MJ and LeBron. It would make that gap a whole lot smaller. Let's look at the man who tied Kareem with 9 MVPs. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is a 14-time All-Star, has 6 rings, a 10-time scoring champion, 11-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defensive, Rookie of the Year winner, a 6-time Finals MVP, and a 5-time MVP winner. Now imagine what 4 more MVPs would do for his legacy. Imagine how much this would strengthen his GOAT case over LeBron James. How could you argue someone's better than MJ if he had a 7-year MVP streak? Next, we're going to look at our 3rd place finisher of the video, Wilt Chamberlain, who had 8 MVPs. Wilt is a 13-time All-Star, has 2 rings, a 7-time scoring champion, 10-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Defensive because the All-Defensive team wasn't implemented until 1969, the Rookie of the Year winner, a 1-time Finals MVP, and a 4-time MVP. Imagine if Wilt Chamberlain added 4 more MVPs to his resume. Wilt Chamberlain is by most people a top 10 player of all time. Some may argue he's top 15 or so. The most obvious blemish on Wilt's track record is really the lack of playoff success he experienced, despite playing so well in the regular season. 4 extra MVPs wouldn't hurt to strengthen his regular season legacy and somewhat hide his playoff imperfections. Okay, let's look at this from the opposite side. Let's look at players that got worse. Players that received less new MVPs than old. The most obvious case of this is Bill Russell, who went from 4 to 0. Bill Russell's a 12-time All-Star, has 11 rings, 11-time All-NBA, 1-time All-Defensive, and a 5-time MVP. A couple of necessary comments on his resume first. Once again, All-Defensive and Finals MVPs were created in 1969, which was Bill Russell's last season in the league. Bill Russell also has an MVP from 1958, which happens to be before the year we started this experiment. For the sake of this odd situation, I'll give Bill Russell the benefit of the doubt and say he keeps that MVP. So let's say that Bill Russell went from 5 MVPs to just 1. Bill Russell's legacy is quite the opposite as Wilt Chamberlain's. Wilt Chamberlain put up really flashy numbers during the regular season. Although Bill Russell's numbers are still great, they aren't nearly as impressive as Chamberlain's. The thing that makes Bill Russell's legacy so special is his untouchable 11 rings. Although 4 less MVPs wouldn't look nice on his basketball resume, I don't think it would affect him as much as some of these other guys, because that's not what his legacy is built around. It's built around his championships. We're gonna look at 2 more cases that stand out. The next one we'll look at is Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson is a 12-time All-Star, 10 times All-NBA, a 3-time Finals MVP, a 4-time assist champion, a 5-time NBA champion, and a 3-time MVP. If Magic Johnson hypothetically lost all 3 of his MVPs, I think it would put a pretty noticeable stain on his legacy. Right now, I think Magic Johnson is competing for and winning the race of 4th all time. If he doesn't have a single MVP to his name, I think it would be easier for Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, or Tim Duncan arguments to make sense for that number 4 spot. Finally, we're going to look at Steve Nash. Steve Nash is an 8-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, 5-time assist champion, and a 2-time MVP. Although Steve Nash's resume may look small compared to everyone else I just showed you guys, it's still pretty good. It's pretty obvious that Nash's 2 MVPs really carry his resume. If Steve Nash's MVPs were just blown away like the wind, it would really negatively affect him. Steve Nash would go from getting John Stockton comparisons to looking like a Rajon Rondo without defense. Okay, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but you get the gist. Despite myself going through endless troubles to make this hypothetical video, I do honestly like how the NBA chooses its MVPs. Imagine how boring it would be to see someone like Michael Jordan win MVP after MVP year after year. You would get sick of it by the 3rd year. I like how the NBA selects its MVPs. The NBA isn't atrocious at picking them. You're still going to get a worthy candidate winning the award every year. Typically, the player that wins the award is on a top 5 team in the league, meaning their playstyle normally translates into winning basketball, which truly shows how valuable you are. I also like how interesting storylines in the NBA can reveal themselves through the MVP award. However, the part I don't like is how a player's postseason success can affect people's votes without them even realizing. I mean, it's a regular season award, right? If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more.